Welcome to the PULSEcast. I'm your host, Steve Molk. Today we are joined by Joyce Tungy, Offa Foykow and Joe Drayton. We are recording this podcast on the land of the Barramadigal people of the Darug Nation. Sovereignty was never ceded, and we offer our respect to their elders past and present and seek to grow relationships with their emerging elders. Mm-hmm. Friends, hello. It's great to see you all.
Hi.
So I know I introduced you and said Joyce, Offa, Joe. Here we are. So we are the Pulse team.
Yeah.
What's Pulse?
Yikes. What a question.
Oh, let's ask the person who should know the most, Joe Drayton.
Oh, don't. Thank you very much, Molk. My name's Joe Drayton. I've been team leader for about, I think this is 4 weeks.
6 minutes, yeah.
6.5 minutes, exactly, yes. What is Pulse? Pulse is the heartbeat of the church. We are the blood that flows. We are the wind beneath your wings.
I like it.
We're told we're the future of the church, but in so many ways I want to think that we are the now and the near, and that we're in touch with what's going on. Not so much about, what could be,
So
what is.
Just to pick up even on that, we are told that we are the future of the church.
Yeah, big.
Without jumping ahead, like fact or fiction?
Oh, I want to say somewhere in the middle there. Mm-hmm. I want that to be very real, but I don't want that to be the only future for the church. I don't want us to be relying on what the people that we're working with or that we're expected to be working with, but that we're part of, holding hands and singing Kumbaya with everybody about what is the future of the church.
And it's dismissive, isn't it? Like if we start to say that we're young people of the future of church, it means that everybody else isn't.
Correct, exactly. So I don't want to say that we're it, because we can't be it. We can't physically possibly be it, partly because you and I are not young anymore.
And speak for yourself.
And you.
That hits me in a special place.
I'm so sorry. Edit that out.
It's fine. No, nothing's getting edited. I'm too lazy. But the flip side of that statement also, that young people of the future of church, also diminishes their place in the church now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we find ourselves in this glorious dichotomy where we understand the best intention that is made in that statement, and yet Pulse exists living right in the middle of that. And it's such a strange place. Offa, what is Pulse?
Important.
Yay.
That's it?
I mean, I thought Joe kind of covered it all. I was going to say, I think my biggest frustrations is always people looking at young people today for the future. Literally what you just said, that's why I was like, and I'll be quiet now because Molk's already made the point. But yeah, there are young people today who are making a change today and not just for the future, not just for their future.
Yes.
I mean, like young kids today we see, especially in advocacy, they're everywhere. In climate change, in indigenous empowerment, LGBT issues. They are here today. Don't push them aside. Don't ignore them. How can we make them a part of the church today as well as the church of the future?
Yeah, solid.
And going back to that Church of the Future thing, it's a heavy burden to lay on young shoulders. Too much to lay on young shoulders.
And without getting into some of the stuff that leans into that, when you say you're the future of the church and you look at the church now and go, man, like the church needs some help. If I'm if that's my future, I don't want to be a part of that. Like some of that stuff that lands into it. Joyce, what's Pulse?
I think Pulse for me is the woohoo, let's go, yes, stand up again, and again. I think that for me, that's what Pulse is.
Preach, sister.
And I think we're in a wonderful space where we journey with young people and make sure that they're set and they're ready to carry on the baton in our relay. And be like, and I'm going to stand in the crowd, front row, and whenever you need me to come back and run the race with you, we are there.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of like about where we are in our team and what we can do for our church. Because sometimes they forget we're part of the race as well, which is not cool, but at the same time, it's encouraging. Sometimes we need to make that first uncomfortable step of, I'm here too, and my friends, and we're gonna be part of your relay. So I think that's, for me, is what Pulse is.
That's glorious. Well, that's the Pulse report for Synod this year. We're glad that you could join us. Thank you. Are there any questions? Lots of yellow cards. So with us being the Pulse team, obviously we're not all sitting in each other's pockets doing the same thing. What do you do as a part of the Pulse team, Joe?
It's a very good question. I'm still trying to work that out. But I am appointed to lead this team, to empower you guys to do more. And then what I want to do is find more people to do the more with you so that you're not actually doing all the more.
Yeah.
And so that we are creating cohorts, we're creating energy, we're creating a dynamic in the church because we don't know what the answer is to what the church is of the future.
Yes.
The potential is enormous in the Uniting Church for the future of this church because we're asset rich, we're people rich, we're theologically sound and broad. And so my role is, I think, for me in this role is to find new edges to that and to help you guys find more people and engage more people and, you know, how do we do that together? That's, I think, what I'm doing.
Rich is a great theme in that too. And I've got a question for you later on that, Joe.
Great.
Joyce, what do you do in the Pulse team?
What do I do in the Pulse team? My role in the Pulse team is to work along in specified ministry within children's and family.
Yes.
Right now, super exciting time. We're coming into our Kids Camp Out 2023.
By the time everyone's heard this,
I know.
it'll be done. So how was KCO, Joyce?
Oh, just like we're like a few days out from KCO and I'm just loving the vibe. I'm not too sure if I'm going crazy yet, but I'm super excited and bring it on. Like, let's go team. Just want to be amongst the young people and the wisdom that we will bring and the wisdom that children's and family ministry bring. Not only the kids and the quirkiness and they're funny and like the random things we talk about with our children, but also the wisdom of their leaders. Yes. And that includes our parents, that includes our families. What does it mean to be a whole church together with young people? So, that's where I'm at with the Pulse team.
Fabulous. Thank you. Offa, what do you do in the Pulse team?
Hello, I'm Offa. I work for Pulse.
Come on.
Really? Great.
I am the youth ministry lead. So one of the bigger events I'll be leading this year is our Uniting Youth Camp.
Yeah, come on.
Second time running
Second
it.
time in a row.
Thank you, COVID, for stopping that for a while. But yeah, so I'm kind of in the midst of that, even though that's in October. I'm like super pumped for these high schoolers to come back to this mountaintop event and just experience this time together. The fun, the crazy, the loud activities, and doing it all centered around Christ.
Yes.
And so outside of that scope, I meet with youth leaders, ministers, youth groups, and just get a feel of their energy, see how I can support them, whether it's resourcing, whether it's just connecting other youth groups or leaders to each other, because I feel like that's really important. Yeah. Like, it's great when everyone's doing their own thing, but it's kind of even better when they're like, oh my gosh, let's do stuff together because we have similar, paths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, especially as a team, that's one of the blessings that I'm working within. Like, just connecting these young people together where sometimes they don't feel as supported, especially by the wider church, no offense. But it's the reality kind of thing,
That's the wrong podcast to be saying that.
But yeah, so I love it. I love seeing the joy and even sometimes the hardships, because it's seeing the leaders help these young people through, and then also trying to support the leaders because it's not easy for them too. It's just a great big ball of mess, but a blessing to be a part of.
Yeah.
And Molk, what do you do with the Pulse team?
Look, as little as possible, which is why I'm in young adult ministry.
We've noticed we weren't going to say anything on the podcast.
I've got all of the stuff. I'm doing all the work here. What is this all about? I'm
It's
Molk.
on video, it's okay.
No, that's all right. I'm
There's
Molk.
proof.
I also work for Pulse. And I focus on young adult ministry. So in the scope of how we fit together, Joyce, with your children's and family stuff, that's little people and their carers.
Yes.
Up till, grade 6-ish, really, isn't it? And then Offa, you take over when they get to grade 7, and you hold them until the end of high school, sort of the buffer out of that.
Yep.
And that's where, so we have these
kind of
great
transition,
overlaps.
yeah.
Where your stuff, Offa, and Joyce close together, particularly if we think of the days of Priority 1, where you would have your grade 6 group transitioning into youth group. And now the extension is youth group into young adults, because we also acknowledge that it's not just ministry. If I say to young people, it's ministry with young people. Yep. So there's lots of youth-aged and young adult-aged people that engage in children's ministry. Yep. There's a bunch of young adults that engage in youth ministry. Yep. So it's working in each of those spaces as well. So it's a part of connecting with not only the incredible young adults that we have within our movement and encouraging them as they find their place, as they come to understand a smidgen, a bit of what God has in store for them and how they can engage and be in part of that, encouraging them in their local context as much as connecting them to the wider church and trying to, well, if they want to get on committees, we can find them spots, trying to keep them off committees just because they're a young person.
Because there are spots.
That's right, fighting the battles. And then also engaging with, in the same way, the people that lead them. So there are a small handful of young adult leaders, as in people who lead young adult groups within the life of our synod. And then we also are very fortunate to have a number of tertiary chaplains who engage in ministry specifically in those spaces. And that's not to suggest that those that go to TAFE or don't go to uni aren't important. It's just that that's an extension of I've been at school, I'm continuing my schooling. So there's this great little...
another captive audience.
This cluster.
We've resourced,
And a really critical time, because while we acknowledge that young people are making decisions heaps earlier in their life into youth and even, late primary school, when you get to young adult university particularly, all bets are off. All the stuff that you thought you knew, you are presented with a whole bunch of new variations of that. Yeah. And so we find often that young people head to university or step out into adulthood, into the world, and... look, we pray that God is with them and that they're making good choices and doing all those sorts of things. When they're confronted by all of the choices in the world,
so many more options.
It can be confronting for them. They need support again. Everything that maybe they tied their foundational stuff to can get undermined either because they want to or because they've been challenged about that and they've never been challenged before. So young adult ministry is this glorious mix of all of that stuff, and I'm deeply privileged to be involved in all of that stuff. It does open up for us, though, some real questions. Like, we have ordained people and lay people that lead our congregations and do all sorts of ministry things. Why do we need the Pulse team? Like, we know what Pulse is and we know a bit of what Pulse does, but why engage in youth ministry? Can't we just get Reverend such and such or, Frank, who's been the youth group leader for 13 years, can't he just run youth ministry for the synod? Why do we need youth ministry? Why do we need ministry with small people and young adults? What's important about that?
I think there's an importance of being intentional as a church. And I think as much as individual leaders, ministers, lay leaders may have passions and skills and stuff, I think a group is needed to help facilitate or build make those spaces. Because I think for a while there hasn't been spaces like that, at least before the Pulse team.
Not intentional spaces.
Yeah. And it's really hard for, even experiences for youth leaders, youth groups, without something like Pulse, it's really hard for them to then find and connect and network to find who can we camp with, because not every leader has that skill, right? So the intention behind a specific team to help facilitate these spaces, I think, is needed.
We're also about leadership development. We have an increasing focus, and we're doing more work on that this year and the coming years, about developing leaders in those spaces, resourcing leaders in those spaces. There's a whole Growing Young program that someone can talk about in a minute if you want, that is intended to help the church grow younger and have an outlook that's focused on intergenerational worship and on creating spaces where young people can engage in a way they understand. So that's part of what we do as well, and that's important to have those conversations in cohorts and swap ideas and resource each other. So part of our thing is leadership development. We've also got university programs and blah, 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 blah. But this is not the Pulse promo.
No. Not yet, it's
podcast.
That's next time.
Correct. So, we have a place for catching wisdom, bottling it, and distributing it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's part of the Pulse thing.
It is.
So why is ministry with children and families and like little people important, Joyce?
With like young people have always been left to the side or come in, do the food in my experience, and then go back to the side. Where Pulse Team is here to remind the wider church body that young people are part of we're part of the story.
Yes.
And that the church is also here to work alongside us and to provide the space of formation of what does it mean to know and love Jesus? What does it mean to follow Christ?
Yep.
And when we open and be intentional about those spaces, we really can be the hands and feet of Jesus on the ground. And I think that's super important in our ministry as in the Pulse team. But also just to, we love and we support all the leaders that we work with. Like, they're not, even though we're spread out across all New South Wales and ACT, we're reminded that we have lay, we have volunteers, we have ministers that just sometimes we need a bit of this, we need a bit of that. Yep. We need to start talking more about young people. And I think that's the beauty of where we are, because we can be like, oh, so this is happening. We, like, the resources is so abundant within our church, and just reminding the wider church that this is here where we want to be part of your story.
We can link it all up.
We can link it all up.
We can capture it, we hear about it, we see it in action. We get to build relationships with people, and then we can link them all up and
that's right.
They can cross-pollinate, and God willing, it all just goes boom.
Yes.
And that's really important, right? Because we don't pretend that the Pulse team are the keepers of all knowledge.
No way.
And we really want to make sure that everyone recognises that. We are stating it publicly, video, audio. The Pulse team don't know everything. We are in a position.
Surprising as that may be. Particularly me with my long service in the team.
Extensive. It is important that we engage with the people who are involved, the volunteers, the ministers, the leaders who've been faithfully serving, doing the stuff. Yeah. That also doesn't mean that they know everything either. We love them and we care for them. We can introduce them to new ideas. They can introduce us to new ideas. And Frank and Joan and Michael, who are involved in their local congregation or in their presbytery context, can be involved with each other and go, oh, we've tried this and this really worked well. So there's all of that stuff, which is great. And also, you touched on it a bit before, Offa, in our, you called it the mountaintop events. Yeah. Literally, I think every event we have is near or on top of a mountain, but that's not why you said it like that. There's an economy of scale that Pulse brings in having a synod focus, in having a New South Wales ACT-wide focus that allows us to say, you know what, we can engage and set up a youth camp for high schoolers. We can set up something like Kids Camp Out, which is for our older primary age and their carers, and not expect like a cluster of congregations, not to say that they can't, but not expect them to do it. And while they would very graciously, I'm sure, open that up to anybody else that wanted to come, we can own that with them. So where there's energy and enthusiasm to be involved in like Kids Camp Out, come and be involved in the leadership team. Where there's energy and enthusiasm to be involved in UIC, we want you on our leadership team, or just come and be a leader at the camp and provide that opportunity where we go from, we might have 10 or 20 or however many young people in our youth group as the example. Yeah. Come to UIC and be with 80 other young people who then we know, beyond the formal program stuff that we do, are talking about life, are engaging in stuff. And then outside of their small groups, they're talking to their leaders or they're talking about other young people, new friends that they've made. And it's not just like light stuff. The conversations that our young people, whether they are small, medium or large, are engaging in a deep questions of faith and theology and what does it mean to be a follower of Jesus. And you said something the other day that made me think about my experience, and that stuff is super valuable. And the step outside of the everyday and the normal, that is Friday night or Sunday night youth group or whenever it happens for you, provides and opens up some of that, because straight away my environment's changed. Things are a bit weird and a bit uncomfortable. And then there's other people that I don't see. And all of that sort of stuff makes it an even more interesting and developmental process.
Yeah.
Along those lines, though, the church has heaps of expectations on young people. We touched on some of them before. And it also has, frankly, fairly and unfairly, big expectations on the Pulse team. We're here to fight those battles. Don't worry, friends. We've got broad shoulders and we can hold them out. Given your experience, each of you, in ministry with young people, what I want to know is what is a myth, a huge myth that you've heard within the life of the church about ministry with young people? Or what's something that, I say this intentionally but very generously, what's something that you've heard an old person say about young people that maybe isn't 100% correct?
If only we had a youth worker, we'd have young families back in the church.
But Jo, isn't that the truth?
Not when you're going to employ an untrained, inexperienced 19 or 20-year-old
On 2 hours a week.
on, even if it was 6 or 8 hours a week,
Yep.
it's not going to change the world. But that's a common one.
I always hear, we just need to start a youth group and then young people will come.
Yes.
Obviously. Obviously.
Was the person that said that 68?
I've heard it from even parents wanting, like with a good intention
Sure.
of wanting their kids to have something. But I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
without the community, without the whole community backing it and actually being involved actively and not just
turning up.
and not just passively being like, just start a youth group, have a youth worker or even a volunteer youth worker, which great, put a lot of pressure on them, and magically young people will be here, drawn
Yep.
from where, I don't know. But yeah, so that's what I always hear.
What about you, Joyce?
Ooh. I think I've been told that young people don't know what they're doing, and they're just told to just sit and listen
Yep.
and shut up.
The Bible
Say it.
clearly tells us
Literally.
that Jesus reaches out and wants children to come to him.
Yes.
He knows them. They know him.
Yep.
How can they not know? How can they not
Tell
see
me.
and hear and know? I find that hard. Some of the greatest stuff comes out of kids' mouths.
Yeah.
Middle of an Easter service, Easter just gone. The minister was doing the kids' talk and blah, 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 and one of the kids yells out, "It's about the sacrifice!" And everyone in the church went,
Yeah.
actually,
I love that.
There's a great deal of wisdom. There was this moment where I don't know if it was just me who paused and there was silence in my head for about 3 seconds where I went, "Wow, good on you, buddy."
Seeing
And there was
those
just
moments,
such enormous insight into the simple message that was being. It was great.
That
It was
young
really
person's now the New Testament lecturer. I don't feel
I
like
mean,
Yeah,
it.
okay. So he might be 7, but definitely on his way to being.
Yeah.
You've got an excellent thesis on Jude.
I
Yes.
have one that's, I think, a bit more recent, which really grinds my gears. Because I think it applies for both some senior high schoolers and then for a lot of young adults. I think an expectation and a myth that, if we just put a young person on this committee, we'll solve it.
Yeah.
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh. Yes.
that's interesting. Again, is there any training, mentoring? How are you actually supporting young people? Are there gifts in being a committee, especially with the way we run
On that
committees and
committee.
meetings?
But even on that committee, because
Yeah.
they might be someone that has great skills that can bring to committee A, but committee B that you want to force them onto, they have no deal, no dice
Yeah.
being there.
So just chucking young people in the deep end and being like, be on that committee, and that's how we're going to support young people.
And then feeling
Please
disappointed
no.
when they don't make the contribution and don't
Yeah.
solve the problem
Yeah.
because they feel so overwhelmed on that
And the
that
pressure.
environment and under pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we honestly, and I think it wouldn't be a bad idea, we could spend a whole episode talking about the myths of youth ministry and all of those
And be
sorts
the
of things.
But let's
myth
spend that
busters.
time
And
encouraging.
bust it. No, but to bust them, to
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
that stuff out, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll throw one into the mix, and it's an old standard for mine, that congregations that are keen to re-engage or keen to re-enliven their ministry with young people, we just need to get a minister with a family so that we can start
That's
a youth
beauty.
group or restart a youth group.
So true.
And apart from navigating the nature of how we call people and who we call, are we calling, the minister's partner and their children, or are we calling the minister? All of those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of pressure to put on a whole family. that is coming new into your, if indeed they accept the call.
But is their skill, is their gift, is their call ministry with young people?
Mate.
Or is their skill, gift and call amazing theology or community engagement with over 70s?
Mate,
Who
that
knows?
minister's-
It's just, the assumption is ridiculous.
That minister's 7-year-old and 10-year-old are not responsible.
No.
Yeah,
for-
again, the
No way.
pressure
Not
you're putting on these
responsible.
kids,
Yeah.
on the wife or partner, like,
The other one that I'll drop in there, and this is a mic drop big moment, there are no young people in our community.
oh, I love that one.
And I understand, I've been able to navigate that when particularly an old person says that, they mean in our church,
Yeah.
Congregation.
in our congregation, that's right. And the reality is that I'm going to stick my neck out and say for 90% of our buildings in just our denomination, in our movement, there are at least 2 schools within 10 kilometres of the building.
But also in the building, there's probably a ballet school, a playgroup,
Yep.
community run,
And then,
you know, autism support group.
something
Yeah.
and something and
There's
something.
something going on in those community spaces that happen to be churches that people rent, use, and frequent. The community's in there.
Oh.
It's how do we engage with them?
At a practical layer, some congregations are absolutely leveraging their asset to make sure that it helps pay for and maintain it by engaging the community and drawing it in, and they're missing the really huge intentional missional opportunity that appears on their doorstep and in their hall 3 to 5 times a week.
Yeah. And we
all
don't
of
want to. We're not being critical. We're not trying to
No.
point out. We're not trying to be. We're not criticising. But some of these myths need to be busted because there's encouragement in actually pulling that apart and wondering what else might we do and how might we do something differently.
Yeah.
So rather than just flinging rocks,
Yep.
where we're saying these things are unhelpful messages, maybe have a think about them, ask a question,
Yep.
and rethink.
My middle name's
how we're
David, and I
engaging.
brought a slingshot to work today. Doesn't matter, you know what I meant. So given that, in
Kinda.
fact, I'm flinging rocks. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But you raise a good point in that, dance classes and all sorts of things come into it, come onto our property. The world breaking into God's, if we want to mangle that metaphor. So what then, friends, just one idea. If a congregation or a presbytery wanted to re-engage or re-enliven or even restart their ministry with young people, what's one thing that they could think about doing or start doing or try or have a meeting about? Because we do that really good.
Yep. Listen carefully.
Listen to who or to us?
Ask them.
Yep.
Ask the users of the space. Ask the young people what's helpful, what's good, what might be lacking, what can we do to help, how can we, engage with you, how can we interact? So asking
where
the
you have
question and
those-
listening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you've got those opportunities, ask the questions and then shut up and listen.
Yeah, turn up and talk to them.
Yes.
Don't just give them limitations on what they can't do in your building.
Yeah. Joyce, what's one thing that
I
they could do?
I love straight. Just you need to turn up.
Yep.
You need to turn up and see what's going on. I think it's super easy for church communities to be like, all right, so what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's the first step of stepping out of your comfort zone, out of the church, and really turning up to hear what the community want and what can you offer the community. And I think there's so much gifts and skills that churches have that they can offer to the community, and they can do other than just allowing groups to hire out the hall, hire out the church, and spaces like that.
Offer.
For churches and congregations that have young people actually within their congregation itself, I would say be intentional about building relationships with them.
Yeah.
Actually have conversations with them. Don't just out of the bat judge them for the things that they might say, or even how they might initially react to you trying to start building that relationship.
Tease that out for me. What do you mean by building relationships? Because if I'm someone else's dad and I want to build a relationship with, my friend's son who's in grade 8, what does that look like?
I think having conversations. Having conversations to get to know the young people in your environment, in your congregation. So you can build it to a point where they feel the community supporting them for who they are, for how they're growing, for the goods and the bads. Because I think young people may feel really judged at times, especially by the church, in my experience. And so it's about breaking that and having them feel loved and understood and being like, oh, actually, I can keep coming here even after my parents stop nudging me to be like, oh, come to church on Sunday because it's really important. Oh, go to youth group because it's really, like when you start making those decisions for yourself as a young person, when you feel support and love in a community, it's so much easier to be like, this is a space I want to continue to come be a part of.
Raise something that occurs to me in that conversation. There's so much in building those relationships. We have a series of generations now. We talk about generation X, Y, Z, alpha, etc. So the generation gap that we used to talk about when I was a girl is a totally different thing. We've actually now analysed it, categorised it, documented it, and you know, there's so much you can read about the generation gaps. So when you're talking about building relationships, there's a lot to think about. And there's huge differences between people who are somebody's father's age and the 7 or 8 year old that we're talking about. So those things need to come into it, and space needs to be made for that. And consideration and insight and understanding and learning, and go do some research, go do some reading about what that generation is, because there'll be some characteristics of that age group that are well documented and are accessible. So maybe a little bit of research to take you outside your own head and what your expectation of church is, and perhaps what those young people might be thinking, wondering, expecting, hoping for in an environment that's healthy and helpful for them, and may engage them in a conversation about faith without the expectations overlaid upon either behaviour or outcomes or dress or whatever, because the kids are growing up in a totally different world.
The nuances. Some of them are nuances and some of them are just buckets of difference, right?
Blazingly obvious.
The generations are vital. And for me to connect the two things that you're saying, within the Pulse team, we're really passionate about Full Youth Institute's Growing Young as a process and a way to encourage a congregation to change its culture and reconnect or to restart its ministry with young people. And that thing that you were talking about, Offer, particularly really resonates with me because it speaks about one of the 6 core competencies that they have within Growing Young is empathy. And that relationship stuff is so vital. In the book, they talk about sitting in the gutter next to young people and being with them, not telling them how to fix it, but being with them, watching their problems float by. So that we're just in it with them. You know, to lean into a biblical reference, it's the people that eventually shut up and sat down next to Job and covered themselves in ashes with him and just sat there. That relationship stuff is vital, and a really positive way that they talk about it in Growing Young is to flip the notion of ratios. In Safe Church, we understand we need to have one leader, so many kids, and it's allowing us to do things in a way that is empowering and supportive and encouraging. In Growing Young, they talk about having 4 or 5 adults intentionally invested in relationship care of a young person. Now, that's not overwhelming them every time they walk in the church door. It's being accessible and intentional in the way that I engage in that young person's life.
An informed, safe church engagement.
Absolutely.
That is informed by our Royal Commission. The fuller stuff isn't, but our adaptation of it is. And so all the things are important to keep children safe.
So it means talking with their carers and saying, hey, or even the church culture is, hey, person, your son, seems to get on well with Offer and Joyce and Molk. We'd like to make them part of his team. And what that means is that when, he's got a big soccer game on the weekend, we just turn up and yell like banshees for him. We are there for no other reason than for that young person. Or they've got a big, band concert at school or something, but also invested in while it's really great to say, hey, young person, what's going on this week? I've got a maths exam. Hey, no worries, I'll pray for you. That's great. Like super effort, well done person. Next week, hey, young person, how did the maths exam go? How do you feel you went?
I see you, I hear you, I value you.
100%.
You are important.
It's that stuff together, because if we lean into that relationship stuff, we overcome all of the things that we generationally think separate us and divide us. We know that for the first time last year, Generation Y became the bulk of our workforce. like in not just our nation globally, but let's just think here. We know that there are more and more boomers living longer, which offer us all sorts of pressures around homes, around pensions, around taxes, around all sorts of the things that we're feeling. Why our millennials and Gen Zs look at the property market and go, I am never, ever owning a brick of a house. Like, it's ludicrous stuff. And none of that changes, except that when we invest and engage ourselves intentionally in the relationship, in the lives of other people, and are willing to recognise God at work in their lives and be people who offer the fruit of the Spirit to them, then all of a sudden, the fact that, I'm a this person or I'm a that or I'm a generation flipped or something fades into nothingness.
The good news, that transcends all generations.
Yes.
The message is consistent.
Thank God, right?
And yes, really. Absolutely, is the thing that holds us all together, binds us all together. So that don't be scared to talk to young people because they're from generation Q, whatever.
They are scary, but don't be scared.
Yeah, well, we're all scary, aren't we?
Yeah.
We all come with nuance and baggage and whatever.
Welcome to the PULSEcast. I'm the scariest thing you ever met.
Yeah.
Final thoughts. Anything we want to add to that brief introduction to Pulse conversation?
I think just before that, in regard, because you mentioned presbyteries.
Yes.
I think don't fall into the trap of just having, let's just employ one half-time
but offer,
person.
if we employ someone.
They can solve everything.
Yeah. But I think it would be helpful if you had a presbytery plan or strategy on how you're actually looking to help support the congregations, how to support your presbytery in, how can we build spaces within, what pockets, what's our actual demographic within this presbytery, within congregations, and how can we work towards
Whoever could a presbytery contact to help them develop that strategy offer?
Joe, specifically. We're here. We're happy to work alongside with you.
That's ready to go.
And even working alongside other presbyteries, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there's a whole wide world of thinking and possibility and discussions to be had. So
Yes, absolutely. And look, P.S. from Molk, anything less than halftime is a joke. That's my personal bias. Friends, what? Yes, Joyce?
No. In the midst of our sharing, I remember one of the crucial things as we, Offa and I, are young leaders and growing into the space and really digging deep where the Pulse team can help nurture our young people. I do remember our moderator, Simon Hansford, told us and continues to tell the church as oldies that we're becoming oldies now.
yeah, slowly.
We are slowly. But
God, there's so much going on in this already.
but he did say, as leaders of the church, we need to bless our young people and get out of the way.
Hell yeah.
And when we get out of the way and support and love and nurture them in whatever capacity their contexts are. So there's not only one way, there's not only one way to love and nurture, but we're so down for the varieties and the diversity of what young people and the church can bring.
Yes.
So, let's go.
We have not even touched on. We talked on generation gaps. We didn't talk about the whole interculture thing and the differences there and the similarities there and the.
There's differences between cultures?
That's another podcast.
That is another podcast.
There's so much, friends. We've barely scraped the surface. This has been wonderful. If anything that Offa, Joyce, Joe, or I have raised, we would love you to reach out and have a chat with us. We are very approachable. We buy great coffee. We know where there's some great beverage of choice. For me, it's going to be coffee. We know great places where we can take you to have that sit down and have those conversations and encourage you. If you want to be in touch, you can email us at contact-pulse@newsouthwalesact.uca.org.au. You can get all of our contact details from our website, which is pulse.uca.org.au. Or, of course, for all of the young people,
Socials.
we are on the socials at TikTok. We're slowly going to convert the Chinese government. We're on TikTok. We're on Insta. We're even on Twitter for old people at UCA Pulse.
Okay, Twitter's not just for old people. Twitter's a great. That's besides the point.
Twitter is
That's another
definitely
podcast.
Yes.
That's another
Besides the
podcast.
point.
It's definitely for old people. It's definitely for old crazy people. now, that's for
Anywho,
sure.
moving on.
We would love to
No
know.
judgment, no
we would love to
judgment
hear
here.
from you. We would love to know what you think. Please do give us feedback because we're just having a red hot go at this.
Yes.
And we would love you to get involved in the Uniting Church's #1 podcast for youth ministry.
Propaganda.
Because that's who we are right now, friends.
After the first episode.
Come at us, everybody. We want you to prove us wrong. This has been the PULSEcast. My name's Steve Molk. You've been with Joyce Tungy, Offa Foykow, and Joe Drayton. We look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye.
Bye.